Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers. You are in season 4 of Wrestling at Random. And every once in a while, not that all the other shows here on this podcast aren't in my wheelhouse, but every once in a while, the randomizer, I feel like maybe when it lays its head down to sleep, it's listening to old episodes of the Big Audio Nightmare and it's thinking, what can I give Adam and by extension Jeremy that will be very interesting to them and hopefully to listeners as well. And it did that this week. It is All Japan Pro Wrestling television, not from the 80s, not from the 90s, from 1978, April 1978, by far the earliest of any weekly TV I think that we've delved into from any Japanese wrestling promotion, the earliest All Japan Pro Wrestling that we've watched here on the podcast. There's a lot of interesting stuff about this show, including one guy in the main event who we saw over on the bonus feed accompany someone to a match right around this same time period. So we'll tease that out. We'll get to that later. But yeah, Jeremy, this is an interesting one.
A year before my birth is when this show aired, April 22nd, 1978. It was taped the night before, the 21st, at Kurikan Hall. And the 1978, there's not a lot of footage from much earlier than this, because I'm pretty sure the company was 1972 is a number that we know very well from New Japan and All Japan as well. So this is pretty early in the All Japan history books.
Yeah, we're less than 6 years into the existence of All Japan Pro Wrestling. It's crazy to think, because as you said, like All Japan, New Japan, such institutions, you kind of don't think that there was a time when they didn't exist and there was a promotion that they both spawned from. In this case, that was the JWA, the Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance, was where both All Japan and New Japan spawned from, respectively. Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki, the two biggest stars of those promotions, went off on their own and formed their own groups. In All Japan's case, it was October of 1972, some 7 months after the formation of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Giant Baba, along with the Momoda brothers, Mitsuo and Yoshihiro, the sons of Ricky Dozan, joined the JPWA, or the JWA, I should say, in 1960. Baba left in 1972 and formed All Japan Pro Wrestling, the first ever card taking place on October 21st, 1972. So again, less than 6 years before this show occurred. And yeah, it's a really interesting time when you're watching this product, because maybe the ring bears a little bit of resemblance to what people know and love about the early to mid to late 90s of All Japan, but we're a good 10 years away from really the formative style starting to take place. You go back and look at some of the Jumbo Tsuruta, Genichiro Tenryu matches in the late 80s into the early 90s that really paved the way for the Kings Road style. Here we are very firmly planted in Giant Baba's All Japan Pro Wrestling, with a young, very highly touted and very impressive Jumbo Tsuruta, starting to punch his way through. It's a very different All Japan than the other shows that we've watched so far.
Yeah, we've seen some Giant Baba on this show already, but we will talk a little bit more about him and 1978 Baba, where we are. We'll talk about that as we get to his match. He will be on this card later, but we will run down the show in order. And I think you have the full lineup for this show.
Yes.
Did it open with Gino Hernandez and the Destroyer?
It did not. It is an 8-match card. What we see here in either clipped or full form, depending on the match, are the final 3 matches. As you mentioned, this is from Kurikan Hall, the same Kurikan Hall that hosts at least one wrestling show a day and sometimes 2 or 3 a day, even in modern days in 2023 as we record this. But it was going strong and filling largely the same role on tours then that it does now. It was the opening show on this tour for All Japan Pro Wrestling, leading to several major shows in the weeks that would follow. The opener was a young, flashy, exciting junior heavyweight named Atsushi Onita.
Wow.
He was in the opener pre-knee injury, tearing it up as a junior heavyweight, as a young wrestler, against Kim Kwang-sik. That was the opener. We then had a match that feels like it took place on every All Japan show for 35 years. The aforementioned Mitsuo Momota against Masafuchi. Momota won there. The Onita Kim Kwang-sik match went to a 20-minute draw prior to that. We have Mr. Hayashi taking on Munenori Higo in the third match. Al Madril defeats Misao Ito in match number 4. So, yes, you got wacky foreigners that you wouldn't expect, even all the way back in April 1978. We then have the Great Kojika and Matoshi Okuma defeating Don Kent and Nelson Royal, former NWA junior heavyweight champion, I believe, Nelson Royal. And that takes us to the final 3 matches on the card.
Well, I believe Nelson Royal is also the one that told us about the bunkhouse stampede around the campfire, right?
That is very true, and I would view that as a much more of a career highlight than being the NWA junior heavyweight champion. It's a great memory. If you go back, I believe, to is it season 1?
It has to be.
2 of the podcast? It has to be. It feels like it was a decade ago. It feels like it was 1978 when he told us on this podcast about that. But yeah, so Nelson Royal, famous for many things, including that. That takes us to the final 3 matches on this show. The first of which, the Destroyer, a legend among legends in Japan. It is the Destroyer taking on, of all people, a young Gino Hernandez.
I immediately see this, and I'm like trying to do math in my head. I'm like, how old was Gino Hernandez here? Because he always seemed like a young guy. Yes. In world class in the 80s, and we are
when he passed away, he was very young. So.
Right, yeah. So you need to get his birth year so we can see how old he was in 1978, because he's got to be extremely young and extra surprising to be doing a tour of Japan at whatever age he was here.
He had just turned 21
on
August 8th of that year, so he was just 21 years old. It's funny to hear these All Japan announcers refer to him as a young lion, obviously not a New Japan young lion, but a young lion in the wrestling ring. But yeah, if you would have told me that there was a match from Japan pitting Gino Hernandez against the Destroyer, I would not have believed you. I feel like this match, unfortunately, it's only in clip form. This is another one of those proof of concept matches for the randomizer. This match took place in 1978. In All Japan Pro Wrestling, and we're getting to see it now.
Yeah, it brought me up because I was a little bit down when the show started, because 1978, we didn't have the classic All Japan of the 80s theme song that I love so much. We didn't have it here, and I'm like, oh, bummer. And then I see Gino Hernandez and the Destroyer on my screen, and I'm like, all right, I'm back up. I'm ready to go.
Right back in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was right there with you. I was... you just reflexively expect to hear that beautiful orchestral, upbeat All Japan Pro Wrestling theme song. If you've never heard it before, you can go back, and I think in almost any episode that we've done where we've talked about All Japan Pro Wrestling, and that has been the theme song for that TV show,
I splice it in
that.
every single time, and I was getting ready to do it again here, and was wildly disappointed. Yeah, so go listen to any of our reviews of All Japan, and you will hear us waxing poetically about how much we love the All Japan opening song.
And we should just point out, as we mentioned earlier, we should reiterate, we've covered between here on the free feed and on the bonus feed a pretty wide gamut of years of All Japan Pro Wrestling TV that the randomizer has pulled. We had an episode, I believe, from 1984. We had one from 1998 when there was only a half-hour TV show, which I believe featured Kawada and Taue against Jinsei Shinzaki, who a lot of people know it's Hakushi in the WWF, and Hayabusa. I believe there's a few early 90s episodes. So the randomizer's been kind to us in All Japan. But yeah, we're definitely delving further back. And it will be interesting to watch. Like the first thing I thought of when I saw this get pulled up is what a fascinating contrast between this and, for example, those 70s WWF shows or even early 80s WWF TV shows as one example. It'll be very interesting to see the stylistic similarities or differences, particularly because there's some people on these shows that were wrestling in the States on some of those territory 70s shows at the same time.
Yeah, this show starts. This match is in clipped form, so it's already in progress. Gino missed a knee drop. The Destroyer puts on a spinning toe hold, but he gets kicked off by Hernandez. Comes right back with a sunset flip, gets a 2 count. Hernandez gets sent into the corner. He tries a crossbody off the middle rope, but the Destroyer moves out of the way. Hernandez crashes and burns. The Destroyer picks him up, and he power bombs him for a 3 count in 1978. The Destroyer's your winner.
He invents the power bomb apparently in 1978. This is a low trajectory, low speed power bomb. I guess we can't say he invented it because I feel like we saw in one of those World of Sport shows somebody in it might have been Jim Breaks in like the early 70s, late 60s that busted out a power bomb.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think did we see Buddy Rogers break out a power bomb?
You're right, in that match from the 50s.
Yeah,
so and obviously we saw that tandem power bomb in the women's tag from 1983 AWA. So it's one of the other oddities about shows we've seen on this podcast where, like, I think most modern fans think of, or at least I remember in the U.S., it was always billed that Danny Spivey brought the power bomb from Japan to the U.S. I remember watching NWA television at the time, or they even had like promos of Danny Spivey saying he's coming back from Japan. He has a new devastating move. But here we see evidence of it being done 15 years prior, or, like you said, Buddy Rogers doing it in the 50s.
All I can say about this opening match, I know it was clipped down, but what we saw was an incredible pace for 1978. You mentioned let's compare and contrast to the things we've been watching of the 70s, early 80s even, and holy cow, this is a completely different pace than we were seeing for a lot of those 70s matches. And Gino working on developing this character, you could just see the natural abilities already as he's flexing and healing his way out of the ring. This was tremendous fun. I wanted more. Yeah,
I would have loved to have seen more of it. The match itself went 14 minutes and 40 seconds. We maybe got 2-3 minutes of it tops. I also think it's noteworthy in terms of history of this podcast. I think this is somehow the first time we've seen the Destroyer in action on,
I think you're right.
On this podcast.
Yeah. After commercial, a man we have seen many times on this podcast, Dick Murdoch, is in the ring. He's taking on Ricky Hata, and this match is also in progress. We've seen a lot of Dick Murdoch. This is the earliest, I think, of the Dick Murdoch. I think that 95 Slamboree match would be the latest. This is probably the other end of the bookend here.
I believe this is the earliest, unless he was on one of those MSG shows, but I don't think so. It certainly is the earliest. Well, I mean, it's clipped, or joined in progress, but the earliest like full match type of presentation of Dick Murdoch. And yes, he's taking on Rocky Hata, who is a man I'm not overly familiar with. I did note that Rocky Hata on the show that this 6 days later that this was building to, Rocky Hata wrestled Gino Hernandez. So we had a bunch of mixing up of who would be wrestling who on these shows going forward. But yeah, it's always noteworthy when you see Dick Murdoch here again, 17 years prior to Slamboree in 1995. The exact same physical condition that he was in 1995, that he was in 1986, that he was in 1978.
Hata's working the arm of Murdoch. Murdoch counters into an abdominal stretch, but Hata reverses it into an abdominal stretch of his own. Murdoch quickly hip-tossed out of that. Hata, with a quick arm drag, goes back to work on the arm of Dick Murdoch. They grapple on the ground. They're trading positions. Every time Murdoch thinks he's got a hold, Hata reverses.
Yes, he always goes back to the arm, whether it be an arm bar or an arm drag into an arm bar. The hammerlock. I also noted, gotta love Dick Murdoch rocking the one knee pad look. That's a classic. I feel like a lot of times you see older injured wrestlers with the one knee pad look, such as if you are listening in linear fashion and you are a member of our Patreon or the Apple Podcast bonus feed. Barry Windham with the one knee pad at Slamboree 94, which we just reviewed over there. Same look here for Dick Murdoch. You mentioned the mat work. Obviously, it's 1978, so there was not MMA, but this is like rudimentary MMA, early UFC type of ground struggle, or like a very early stage of what you'd see in like a Pancrase fight or a UWF match, where you've got a lot of jockeying for position, guards, half guard, side guard. Even if they didn't know that's what they were doing, that's what they were doing. Pace-wise, this is significantly more slowly paced than the opener that we talked about with the Destroyer and Gino Hernandez. But it's not that boring 70s stalling slow pace. It's one of those matches where, like, if you accept that the conventions of wrestling are real, that like a hammerlock, all these sorts of things, like this is kind of what a real pro wrestling match would look like if those were real moves and you were jockeying for a position. It's very different from other stuff that we've seen, I feel like.
Watching Murdoch work this leg lock, all the mat grappling, it's not the type of match that you think of when you think of Dick Murdoch. So we're getting a lot of grappling, less of the brawling, less of the crazy. They're trading positions again. Hata goes back to the arm. Murdoch with underhooks tries a butterfly suplex that's blocked. Hata still working on the arm.
Yeah, beautiful arm drag here into the arm bar. Like his arm drags it's not like a Ricky Steamboat style where it's like flying. It's, again, if wrestling is real and an arm drag could work, it feels like this is what it would look like. He hooks the arm and then just lets his body fall out from under him and lets gravity and leverage take Murdoch over. Like, Hata's not spectacular, but he's an interesting wrestler for someone I haven't seen a whole lot of.
I still would have traded match lengths with the opener. I would have liked to have seen the opener get this time, this match get the opener's time. We've got a spinning toe hold that gets countered into another armbar, and then we get our first big move of the match. It's a running power slam by Murdoch, an Oklahoma stampede, if you will, followed up with a pile driver.
The announcers call it a stampede. We should also mention, again, Japanese announcing, but you can hear they're talking about Dick Murdoch, and they are talking about him ostensibly being in the NWA world title scene at this point, because they mentioned Flair, meaning Ric Flair. They mentioned Dusty Rhodes, Dory Funk Jr., Harley Race, the Superdome, the NWA world title, and they're talking about Dick Murdoch as well. So he clearly is in the mix at this point.
Hata with a desperation backslide got a near fall, but Murdoch right back on the attack. He hits the brainbuster and gets a 3 count. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Dick Murdoch's brainbuster in 78, all the way through to 95 will take you out for a 3 count. The last 2 minutes of this felt a lot more like a classic Dick Murdoch match than the entire previous time.
The pace definitely picked up the last few minutes. It got a bit more rough. It got a bit more rugged. You mentioned Dick Murdoch winning with the brainbuster. He then, ever the sportsman here in 1978 in Korakuen Hall, massages the neck of Rocky Hata, bows to the fans, checks on Hata again, shakes his hand, and walks out. This is babyface, athletic sportsman Dick Murdoch, which is a bit of a trip.
I was so weirded out by babyface sportsman Dick Murdoch. This was so weird to see, and I'm going through racking my brain. I'm like, have I never seen this before? And I don't think I have. I can't think of an example of weird babyface Dick Murdoch.
Like, I feel like I've seen times where in a match where he's wrestling a another rugged wrestler. He's the de facto babyface, or times where he's been an actual babyface, but he still has been a rugged brawler, not where he's been like, I'm Dick Murdoch and it's 1978 and I have decided to invent the code of honor. That definitely threw me for a loop as well.
So we talked about Giant Baba at the top of the program, and we're about to see him wrestle in this next match. I pulled up some notes from about Giant Baba from Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer newsletter. Baba debuted in pro wrestling September 30th, 1960, same night as Antonio Inoki, both as proteges of Ricky Dozan. Because of his great size, being 6'8.5", close to 300 pounds, he went to the United States, billed as a 7'3" Japanese monster, and was a major headliner around the country in the early 60s. After a coup with Inoki, his legendary tag team partner in the late 60s, to take over the old JWA failed, he left the company and formed All Japan Pro Wrestling. They got NWA recognition and immediately became a major promotion in Japan from its start in late 1972. Baba's impressive for his durability. It's amazing. It's amazing considering his physique with this huge frame. From September 30th, 1960 through April 25th, 1984. He never missed one advertised match for any reason, not injury, travel, or anything. That record, which will likely never be broken, is listed as 3,711 consecutive shows, although the real number is actually quite a bit more, no doubt well over 4,000 shows, because those are only the shows in Japan, and he wrestled numerous dates in the United States, including extended tours during all of those years. So crazy to think how durable Giant Baba was when you think about big guys of the modern era and how many knee injuries, back problems, all the stuff that goes with being a big guy. Baba never missed a date.
No, and to be fair, to be clear, in later years, while he may not have missed a date, he was doing understandably little to nothing in those matches, a few of which we've had here on this podcast. But yes, the fact that like his knees never broke down to the point of not being able to stand, or that his back didn't go out to the point of not being able to get up from the mat, like it is shocking, because he has a unique, large, but also frail in the same time looking physique, even when he was younger, much less when he was older. So yeah, it's interesting here. We see him in 1978, much more, I'd say like the prime, but this is much more of Giant Baba, like as an actual active wrestler, more than kind of the added attraction of just the name being there.
Yeah, this match is 2 out of 3 falls. Giant Baba teaming with another favorite of ours here on the podcast, Jumbo Tsuruta. You want to talk about a young Jumbo Tsuruta here?
Yeah, very young. He's just 5 years into his career at this point, and we'll talk about it throughout the match. But this, to me, is the time where you are really seeing the influence, particularly of Dory Funk, on Jumbo Tsuruta's style, whether it be the European uppercuts or a lot of other things that he does. It's a very different Jumbo Tsuruta than you'd see, into the 80s or early 90s, and some of the other things that we've watched and talked about here on the podcast. As you mentioned, is Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta taking on the team of Ric Flair in 1978 and Kim Duck, who you may know him. He wrestled in the WWF in 83, 84 as Tiger Chung Lee. He also wrestled under the name Kim Duck in Mid-South in Jim Crockett Promotions in the late 70s into the early 80s. So he's a guy who we haven't necessarily seen a lot on this podcast, but he's a name I remember always just seeing in the magazines and wondering, I wonder what that guy's like.
Oh, and he was a job guy. He wrestled like every WWF wrestling challenge from like 86 to 89. He would always, Tiger Kung Lee would always be on there somewhere.
Yeah, he was all over the place, and that includes wrestling in 2022.
Stop it. No, that's...
Yes. I won't say his last match. I will say his most recent match was at the Jumbo Tsuruta 23rd anniversary memorial service show that took place at Korakuen Hall last year that was largely populated by current All Japan and New Japan wrestlers. But he was in a match on that show. It was Tatsumi Fujinami, Tiger Taguchi, and Yoshiaki Yatsu, defeating Masafuchi, Masao Inoue, and Shiro Koshinaka. That is Kim Duck wrestling as Tiger Taguchi.
I was about to ask, what was his name for that match? So that's good.
He's been all over the place. He had a match. He was in a battle royal at the Japan 70th anniversary of pro wrestling show at Korakuen Hall the year before. So not moving all that much, but he has been on shows.
And then you've got Ric Flair here, full robe. This looks like, a very early incarnation of the Ric Flair character you would know for the 80s and 90s.
It's the Ric Flair time-wise. If you go back to the show we did recently again in the bonus feed, the best of Greg the Hammer Valentine, on that show, the first match was Wahoo McDaniel versus Greg the Hammer Valentine. And who was ringside with Greg the Hammer Valentine? His tag team partner, Ric Flair. So it's we have not seen a lot of 70s Ric Flair, and then here between the two feeds, we're getting a heavy dose of it.
Let's get into this match. First fall, Jumbo and Duck start out, and Duck gets the advantage with the Bobby Eaton, where you're hitting your fist, pushing your elbow into your opponent's face. I know that you're a big fan of that move as well.
It makes me very, very happy. He then tags in Ric Flair. Flair comes in, rapid fire punches to the stomach, tags Kim Duck back in, and they throw Jumbo back into the corner. Kim Duck with some clubbing blows, chops to the throat. Ric Flair tags right back in. They throw Jumbo back to the corner again. Snap mirror, short knee drop from Flair. Duck tags in right away. Top rope axe handle, tags in Ric Flair. And talk about pace. That's the most noteworthy thing about the start of this match is so much faster of a pace than you would see in 1978 in most promotions in the U.S. It's also wild to see this team of Ric Flair and Kim Duck going full rockers quick tags for the first several minutes of this match. Talk about unexpected.
Quick tags, in and out, Flair and Duck, and they are just, it is crazy. And the highlight for me too is watching this pace. I'm watching these guys come in and out. Occasionally they're throwing in a double team move, but they're really just coming in, some offense, coming out. And Flair, he grabs Jumbo Tsuruta. He slams the big man, and he screams at him, "Come on, big boy." I love the quiet Japanese atmosphere. I can hear Ric Flair yelling and mocking and taunting his opponents.
Yeah, in 1978, clearly his insult for wrestlers is calling them boy or big boy, depending on their size. It's a really interesting time in the evolution of Ric Flair because, as you said, we're kind of at the leading edge of what would be or what is the Nature Boy Ric Flair character. To me, the most noteworthy thing about this match, I know we're in the early stages of it, but it stood out early and then it carried out all the way through. This is pre-chop Ric Flair.
Yes.
He does not throw a single chop in this entire match. He throws left and right punches. He throws his stomach punches. He throws that knee to the stomach where he grabs the wrestler or his opponent's tights from the front and pulls him in and throws that knee. We see that over and over again, but no chops. It's so weird.
More double teaming by Flair and Duck. Jumbo and Flair trade shots, and Jumbo is able to tag in Giant Baba. So Flair and Duck, they double team Baba. Quick tags continue as they double team Baba in the corner. The Baba beatdown continues until Baba's able to shoot Duck off the ropes and hits the big boot, allowing him to tag Jumbo back in.
Yeah, we've got Baba from the apron with the big boot.
Big backdrop by Jumbo. Flair tags back in. He knocks Jumbo to the floor. Duck rams Jumbo into the ring post. Baba comes over to attack Duck. While in the ring, Flair drops a knee to the forehead of Jumbo a couple of times.
Yeah, like Harley Race style knees. This is well before we always chronicle at what stage are we at in Ric Flair's career vis-a-vis the rolling knee drop. Here it is very much a Harley Race style falling knee drop that he does not roll through with.
We've got Flair screaming, "Who are you looking at?"
Yeah. Now you, punk, who are you looking at? And then he drops another knee. Kim Duck tags in. We get a double clothesline. Then we get kind of an unhinged double team move here for 1978. I wasn't expecting this. Kim Duck grabs Jumbo in like a Boston Crab style slingshot hold, and Ric Flair comes off the top rope with a knee drop out of this position. And this only got a 2 in 1978.
This is crazy. The double teaming just they had the advantage the entire time, and we got to see a double team showcase here from these guys.
Yeah, I did not expect Ric Flair and Kim Duck to be this well-oiled of a machine as a tag team duo here. We get more deranged choking from Flair, which is awesome. Like Flair is he's just like a lightning bolt crackling through this building. Like there is so much energy coursing through the body of Ric Flair, just wanting to be Ric Flair here in Korakuen Hall.
Yeah, and seeing Duck hold Jumbo Tsuruta, which looked super impressive, holding that big dude as Flair came off the top with the knee drop. Pile driver by Duck. Baba breaks up the pin attempt. Flair and Jumbo have a chop battle until Jumbo takes Flair down.
A chop, it's Jumbo throwing chops. It's Flair throwing punches to the stomach. No chops from Flair.
No chops from Flair. That's what's unique about this battle. And Jumbo takes Flair down, tries for a Boston Crab, can't get it. So he busts out a giant swing.
I was not expecting that. The giant swing from Jumbo. Flair back up, tries a knee drop, but Jumbo shakes him off, and this is where I had it wrong earlier. This is where he whips Flair into the ropes, and Giant Baba with a big boot from the apron. He gets his boot over the top rope into the ring, knocking Flair down. It's interesting in that I think like if you had an idea of, 1978 Jumbo is going to be a ton more active, not necessarily the case. I feel like we've seen clips of something of his from the earlier 70s. I can't remember whether it was on this podcast or it was just something I watched my own time. No, it was Who Did He Wrestle? And it was much more of like a grounded match. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy. I think it wasn't Bockwinkel. Was it Briscoe? Was it Jack or Jerry Briscoe against Giant Baba over on the bonus feed from like 73 or 74? And we saw a lot of like mat wrestling, not unlike the Dick Murdoch Rocky Hata match. And that was a trip. This is more of what you'd expect from older Baba here on display in 78.
After the boot, Baba tags in, hits a swinging neck breaker, only gets a 1 count. A Russian leg sweep by Baba gets a 2 count this time. Flair tags back in. Duck hits a double axe off the top. Flair goes for the pin, but Jumbo makes the save. We then get a double atomic drop by Flair and Duck, a double body slam, and Ric Flair gets the pin on Giant Baba. This is the most unexpected finish of the first fall. I did not see that coming.
No, I stood up out of my chair, off my couch, whatever you want to say. I was shocked to see Ric Flair here pinning Giant Baba. I also, as we were watching this, did not know that it was a 2 out of 3 falls match at first. So I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Ric
exactly.
Flair just out of nowhere pinned Giant Baba. Holy crap. Instead, it's only the first fall, but still, Giant Baba wasn't in the business of dropping falls to just anyone. It just speaks even more to, particularly what we talked about, what you mentioned about All Japan being a strong NWA territory at this point, how Ric Flair was perceived and valued within the NWA and by extension in All Japan, that he got this non-fluke, like completely legit first fall pinfall victory over Giant Baba. Shocking.
Flair talking all kinds of trash after the pin as we go to the second fall.
We go to the second fall. Flair is walking around. He's taunting Baba. He's taunting Jumbo Tsuruta. The second fall starts. He's yelling at Baba and saying, direct quotes, "I'm the man and you are the boy." I lost it. I love these 1978 insults from Ric Flair saying that he is in fact the man and Giant Baba is the boy.
Yeah, Flair and Duck are double teaming Baba in the corner. Baba's able to dump Duck out of the ring to the floor. Jumbo rams Duck's shoulder into the post. Duck's tossed right back out. Baba rams Duck into things outside. all kinds of stuff. And then back inside, Duck catches Jumbo with a headbutt to the gut and tags Ric Flair back in for more double teaming. This is domination by Flair and Duck.
It's complete domination. It's so weird.
Duck with a tombstone pile driver in 1978.
Yeah, it was a tombstone. The announcer said that it was a shoulder breaker, but this, I'm with you. This looks more like a tombstone than a shoulder breaker. Only two. Flair tags in, hits some clubbing blows to the chest because remember, he does not know how to throw a chop yet in 1978. So instead, it's overhand clubbing blows to the chest. Jumbo firing back with chops. He hits the big Jumbo through to high knee. Then a deadlift gut wrench suplex, which felt like it could be a finish here, but Kim Duck makes the save.
All four men are in as it breaks down. Baba and Duck fight to the floor. Inside, Jumbo hits an atomic drop on Flair. A backdrop driver, and Jumbo goes for a drop kick and misses. Flair hits an atomic drop that sends Jumbo to the floor, and Jumbo is counted out. Flair and Duck win in 2 straight falls. I didn't think I was going to be more shocked than I was with the first fall result, but I was more shocked by the second fall result. We got a clean sweep for Flair and Duck, and they were worthy victors. They dominated this match.
Yeah, they 100% dominated Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta. 2 straight falls. Yeah, the second fall is a count out, but if you're scoring on points, it clearly that second fall would have gone to them, countouts or not. Flair is flexing. He's just saying "yeah" a lot as he walks around the ring. We then get graphics as the show closes, previewing the upcoming show, which is taking place on, I believe, April 27th to air on April 29th, which would be main evented by Jumbo Tsuruta defending the United National title, the NWA United National title, in a 2 out of 3 falls match against Ric Flair. So this was the heat up for that. And one of the ways to really make Ric Flair seem like he had a chance of defeating Jumbo Tsuruta to win the title is getting a clean victory on Giant Baba, and then his team getting the clean sweep here in a 2 out of 3 falls match. That show on the 27th, Jumbo Tsuruta did defeat Ric Flair in 3 falls. First fall at 1939, second fall at 28-28, the third and deciding fall for Jumbo Tsuruta at 31-27.
Holy cow! How long? That match was almost an hour. Jeez.
Well, no, I mean that's cumulative. It went 31-27.
Okay.
That's at overall mark for the match.
Got it. Okay.
That match, I think maybe I've seen it. I don't know. I would have to go back. I feel like it's probably the matches in 82 or 83 that I've seen. But this is a 7.6 rating on Cage Match, which is a pretty high rating for a match that took place in 1978. So if anybody is a patron and they want to give us they want to be the intentionalizer and give us a curated list of Jumbo Tsuruta versus Ric Flair classics, we would not turn it down.
Yes, please. I'm still trying to get the taste out of my mouth from the quote best of Greg the Hammer Valentine curated list. Yeah. All right. So yeah, this show goes off the air at that point. So let's talk about favorite thing on this show.
Yeah, I would have to say, I mean, I enjoyed babyface man of honor Dick Murdoch. It was cool to see young Gino Hernandez figuring it out. It was fun to finally see the Destroyer on the podcast, but maybe unsurprisingly for me, the star of this show, everyone will be shocked, Ric Flair in 1978 in All Japan Pro Wrestling. Just again, like a lightning bolt. Like you could just feel him jumping out of his skin. He was so engaged in being this Ric Flair character and figuring it out and doing it in front of this completely different audience. Watching Flair particularly go at it with Jumbo Tsuruta was great. And maybe the most surprising thing was, again, the well-oiled team that was Ric Flair and Kim Duck. I want to know, did they ever have a match against the Rockers? Would that set the record for all-time number of tags in shortest period of time in a single match? I don't know, but yeah, that was something.
Yeah, did not see that coming. I think, I agree on that point. Ric Flair is obviously the best thing on this show. Super impressive. Loved everything I saw with him and Jumbo Tsuruta. Super fun. Totally shocked by those outcomes.
Yeah.
I can't say that babyface Dick Murdoch is a positive on the show. It was just
it's not your favorite Dick Murdoch?
It was just weird. It left me like confused and scared, and I was just like, what's going on?
It made me feel like we've had the randomizer. It picks shows, it picks individual matches. Those end up over in the bonus feed. But I've never felt like the randomizer randomized a wrestler's character in a show like it did here with Dick Murdoch. I can't imagine there's too many examples of this throughout Dick Murdoch's career, but it's an interesting, curiosity to watch him again wrestle as a man of honor.
Is there a worse thing on this show for you?
I mean, I think I'll go with what you said earlier, the decision to clip the Gino Hernandez Destroyer match from like 14 minutes and 40 seconds down to maybe 2.5 minutes versus keeping a lot of the not terrible, but really, really slow first 10 minutes of the Dick Murdoch Rocky Hata match in. I'm with you. I would have liked to have seen those joined in progress decisions flipped.
Agreed. That is my worst thing on the show is the production of that.
Other worst thing I think we'll both agree on, we mentioned it earlier, the All Japan theme music was not in effect here in 1978, apparently. That's an atrocity.
No, I can't hold it against them because they hadn't had the idea yet in 1978.
I hold against them. It's their fault for not having the idea yet.
But yeah, it was it's definitely missing. It's something I didn't realize I was going to miss until it was gone, until it just wasn't there. Do love that. I might have to splice it in just to hear it again as we go off the air today.
I think you should, because we always add new listeners. We know that.
Yes.
And maybe these listeners have not heard the previous episodes where that theme song was in effect. Maybe you can add that as a way to play the show out. That can be the outro to this week's show, and people can be they can be enticed to check out our podcasts that cover those episodes and go on YouTube and wherever else and watch some of those old episodes.
Yeah, and I have no problems going and digging out the old Japan song and put it in here. Yeah, it's good stuff. And with that, we are going to call it a podcast, but we've mentioned a bunch of other All Japan shows we've watched here. You can hear about those in the feed that is free that you're listening to right now. Whatever your podcatcher of choice is, just go ahead and look in the back catalog of episodes there. We've reviewed many All Japan TV shows. They're all there for you. If you're like, yeah, I know, I've been a listener for a long time, I've listened to all those, good. Thank you. We couldn't have done this show without your support. We love it. But if you want more content than what we offer every single week on the free feed, we've also mentioned the bonus content over at our patreon.com/wrestling@random site. That is where we put out an extra show every week. There's an extra show. Sometimes it's a match or two. Sometimes it's a whole show. Sometimes it's something weird, and it just doesn't fit in the free feed. It goes in the bonus content. We put out an extra show every single week. And when you sign up to be a patron, or if you're an Apple Podcast subscriber, you hit the subscribe button and it unlocks all of the back catalog of the bonus content. Where are we at now, Adam? How many shows do we have available in the bonus?
Well over 100. If you give me a second, I'll pull up on our Patreon. I should mention, by the way, I went back and looked as you were saying that. So for All Japan, just in the free feed, if you're a new listener, you're enticed by, hey, I want to hear some more All Japan talk. We have an episode covering a show from 1986, one from 1991, one from 1997, and one from 1998. That's just in the free feed.
Wow.
Much less all the craziness we have in the bonus feed.
Yeah, so in the bonus feed, well over 100 episodes, like Adam has mentioned. They all get unlocked the instant you subscribe, the instant you support the show there. And we have extra
106. Sorry
Wow.
to jump in. 106 as we record this episodes in the bonus feed. That is akin to 3 full seasons of this podcast that you've never heard. These are all exclusive to the bonus feed. 3 additional seasons worth of shows that you have never heard if you have yet to subscribe on the bonus feed.
And the most fun part of the bonus feed is the people that bump themselves up from not just the base tier where they get all that bonus content. They bump themselves up 1 tier higher. They can be the randomizer. We call it the intentionalizer, where you go and you can tell us what you'd like us to review. You commission the podcast, and we watch a show of your choosing. And so sometimes it's a curated list of matches. Sometimes it's an old pay-per-view. Sometimes it's a TV show. And it's whatever the listeners, the supporters over on the Patreon want us to listen to, and we will listen to those. We've got a ton of those in the back catalog. We've got a ton of those in the queue coming up. Now, it's never been a better time. That is the most fun we have, is when someone says, hey, I want you to watch these matches, this show. It's important to me. I think it'll be funny if you watch it. I think it'll be a great review. I think we'll all learn something. It's a great time had by all. So we love it. It's the best part of doing this show is getting to interact with everyone over on the bonus content and getting to see what shows you pick for us. So definitely keep those picks coming. If you haven't checked it out, now is the time to do it. The content is flowing. It's great stuff right now. Check it out. And if you can't support the show financially in these times and you can't join the bonus content, we get it as well. The other way to support the show, make sure you're subscribing to everything we do on social media at WrestleAtRandom. That's Twitter and Instagram. And make sure that you tell your wrestling fan friends about the podcast, because wrestling fans know other wrestling fans, and it's we rely on your word of mouth. So bring a friend along with on a trip down memory lane, and throw us a subscription, not just subscribing via your podcatcher of choice, but also there's a video version of this podcast that goes up every single week as well at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@wrestling@random-podcast. There you can subscribe, helps us work the algorithm so other wrestling fans can find the show, and give us likes and all those things on the videos. And if you want to see us instead of hearing us, it's available there as well. So definitely, and for the people that are watching right now on the YouTube, we see you, we know you, and thank you for quietly building up quite a following over on the YouTube side of things. So thanks to everyone who watches the show there.
Absolutely. And as we close this out, I know you always thank me. I'm going to thank the randomizer. I could thank Ric Flair. I could thank Gino Hernandez, but I'm thanking the randomizer. I love it when it brings us stuff from Japan, particularly when it brings us stuff that is from an era even prior to when I started watching. So keep it going, randomizer. You've done good for us. You've done well for us in All Japan. And I have a feeling that at some point, whether it be this season or another season, I'll be interested to see what else it brings us. Maybe it'll bring us more honorable babyface Dick Murdoch. We can only hope.
Thanks, Adam, for joining us, and thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk to you again next time.